Welcome to another episode of Leadership Lessons. My guest today is Brent Leatherwood, and our topic is the Ethics and Religious Liberty Commission of the Southern Baptist Convention, specifically Christians and political issues in the context of leadership. Brent, thank you for joining Leadership Lessons.
Todd, it's good to be with you again. I think we were together about a year or so ago, and so it's great to be back with Kentucky Baptists.
Congratulations, by the way, on the being elected permanently in the role. So let me tell folks about Brent. Brent Leatherwood serves as the president for the Ethics and Religious Liberty Commission of the Southern Baptist Convention. Prior to serving as acting president, Brent served as the chief of staff at the ERLC, as well as the entity's director of strategic partnerships. He brings an expertise in public policy to his work, having been the executive director of the Tennessee Republican Party, the director of communications and political policy strategy in the Tennessee General Assembly, and working for several years on Capitol Hill. So Brent, let's jump right into these questions. What is the ERLC, and what are the top ways ERLC serves Southern Baptist?
Sure. So most people, when they describe the Ethics and Religious Liberty Commission, they say we are the public policy arm of the Southern Baptist Convention. And that's true. I would say it's probably a little deeper than that, because in many ways, the team that we have here at the ERLC, both in Nashville and in Washington and around the country, we see ourselves as representatives of our convention of churches within the public square. So our team comes together to provide any number of resources that seek to, first and foremost, assist our churches. As a matter of fact, that language is in our ministry assignment and our mission. And what I've told the team, it is from that experience, as we assist churches, we speak from that service that we render into the public square. So when we're communicating with public officials and elected leaders throughout the country, we really give them a sense of this is what our churches are working on. These are the challenges that they are facing, and it is from that experience we think we can help them craft better public policy. And so some of those items that I would mention, a public policy agenda that we come out with each year. As a matter of fact, we're getting ready to unveil that next week, which is perfect timing because it's coming out right before the President's annual State of the Union address. We have a number of resources for ethical matters, public policy, things that really seek to assist the church, either with hiring guides to prevent sexual abuse or making sure that their bylaws are updated to reflect our Baptist views on family and sexuality. So those are some of the ways we help churches. And then also we have our Psalm 139 project, which is a ministry of the ERLC that seeks to place life-saving ultrasound machines in pro-life clinics around the country. So that's just a little bit of what we do, Todd.
That's a great overview, and man, I'm so impressed with Psalm 139 and what you guys are doing through that project of helping pregnancy resource centers, literally unsung heroes. There are about 50 of them in Kentucky, 49 that we kind of work with, and so Brent, thank you all for your good work there. If I understand you right, what I think I heard you say is that the ERLC, you and your staff, you're not representing necessarily your own views. Your views aren't contradictory to those of Southern Baptists, but you're trying to understand what are the views of Southern Baptists on public policy issues, and then take those views and those positions to Washington, D.C. or wherever else you take them. Is that about right?
Yeah, that's a great characterization. So obviously, underwriting all we do are scriptural principles. Yep. But then from that, our convention, we've got the Baptist Faith and Message, and then we have each year at our annual meeting the passage of resolutions that in many ways are incredibly helpful to our work. We take those to elected officials and kind of use them as a snapshot of where our churches are on particular issues.
I appreciate you saying that. There's always a desire to get rid of resolutions. People, it seems like a quick fix, but boy, for folks in your position and mine as well, I can't speak on behalf of Kentucky Baptist without resolutions. So I can say to our state, this is what Kentucky Baptists believe about this because we've made some resolutions, and I know that's true for you as well. Brent, what first sparked your interest in this type of work and in these issues?
Well, I got to say, I've always had this kind of affinity, at least as far back as I can remember, towards public policy and crafting, solutions for the problems that people are encountering. and always kind of had an interest naturally in government, but it really took on a new importance for me when in high school, my mom actually campaigned for public office on the city council. And just getting to see her go through that process, talking with voters and folks that she hoped would become her constituents, it just kind of in a way enlivened that experience and made me realize it's something that I always either want to be a part of or near to and speaking into. And what I've tried to tell people is that if you want good policy, you should actually also want good politics, because in order to enact good policy, you need good people in office. And so in that sense, politics is very much a natural way to ensure that good people get elected. And so this is just something that has always kind of drawn me to it. And I think at the end of the day, it's about offering solutions and, from our perspective, God-honoring solutions to the challenges of the day.
You mentioned your mother running for office, and we didn't reference this in your bio, but you're a Tennessee native. You grew up around Chattanooga. Is that right?
That's right. So I'm from East Tennessee. However, this happened. My mom and I, we had actually moved to Florida.
Okay.
So this was a city council race down in Florida, and I have to say, just to brag on my mom, she won.
Oh wow!
Pretty handily, and she had a great little career in that. But now she's back home in Tennessee. Grandkids tend to be a magnet.
I've heard that's the case. So Brent, the issues you're dealing with, oftentimes the conversation around them can feel like it has a rancor attached to it. How do you promote health when there is disagreement? Trying to even work through nuances of an issue that maybe we agree on generally, but on some of the details we may not be in agreement. How do you try to have a healthy disagreement with other believers? How do you personally do that?
Well, I think the best way to do it, and you're absolutely right, our culture right now, it needs models for healthy disagreement. And I would just start at this. Assume the best of one another. Mm-hmm. For fellow believers, that actually should be the place that we start at all times. And I've tried to help people understand no matter your political persuasion, whether you are a conservative or a liberal or a Republican or Democrat or independent, try and see individuals that are working within the political space, try and see them as merely trying to help make our nation a more perfect union. Now, we're going to have significant disagreements, and those are important, and don't shy away from those. But assume that they are somehow trying to make our nation, this world, a little bit better place. And I think if you can see that, and then, again, going back to our faith, understanding that they are made in the image of God just as much as you are, that really helps cut down on some of that. And just like you mentioned at the outset, gosh, our political space right now, our public square, it is so chaotic. It is so polarized. Mm-hmm. It needs to see examples of people who are willing to see beyond differences to the basic humanity of those they may disagree with.
So Brent, some believers really want to lean into these political conversations and social media and every other place. They want to have them. Other believers kind of have a mindset that, look, my calling is the Great Commission, and for that reason, I want to focus on reaching people and making disciples. I have no interest in political issues. How is the work that you do connected to the Great Commission?
I would say just as much as maybe that individual, and I've heard those voices, so I know that is very real. Just as much as that individual is motivated by the Great Commission, I would say I am too, and the members of my team. Matthew 28 applies just as much as to Capitol Hill as it does to the ends of the earth. When we are told to go to all nations, we should start with our own nation. So in that sense, I've really tried over the time that I was interim for the ERLC, and now that I've been privileged to have the permanent role as president, I've really tried in some of the conversations that I've had with pastors or leaders like you, Todd, or other individuals around the SBC, try to help them understand that in many ways we view our team and our work as being sent, being commissioned by the SBC to go into the public square, to bring the gospel and to provide policy solutions that are informed by Scripture to elected officials. And I got to tell you, our team is very good as they're having those conversations to be attuned to where God may be opening the door for a gospel conversation. And I've tried to make sure that people keep that first and foremost above any of the policy work we do, above any of the conversations that we have. That's what we always want to make sure that we are open to, and it's borne some really good fruit.
Yeah, we're all placed in different spots, but all of us are called to be representatives of Jesus and share the gospel with folks who need to hear it. Thank you for your leadership there. So, Brent, you're brand new in this role. You were serving as active president during the interim, and that's when I got to meet you and know you a little bit and became grateful for your leadership and was glad to see you chosen for the position that you're in now. What are some of your leadership priorities, not just about the policy matters you're addressing, but just you personally as you're stepping into the ERLC as an organization? What are some of the priorities that are guiding you on these first few months and maybe even years in this role?
Well, when I first started permanently in this role, after our trustees met last fall, and I'm still, in many ways, still undertaking it, but I wanted to call around to pastors and ministry leaders around the SBC, and to just first and foremost listen, get a sense from them where they thought the ERLC is, where we have provided some real value for them, what they saw as some of the challenges that we needed to overcome, and where we can partner together. And so I would say that first and foremost, it's been listening. And then as you do that, you are, what I've told the team, we really need to concentrate on, fortify relationships across the SBC, whether it's with state convention leaders like you, Todd, or churches throughout our convention, sister entities at the national level, just making sure folks know we're here and we want to partner. I mean, cooperation's a Baptist distinctive, so let's lean into that. And cooperation, we've said this before, but cooperation rides on the rails of relationships. So you've got to form those bonds. And so that's very much what we've been about. And then probably the last thing is service. Really want to put forward a posture of service for all of our churches and for everyone that we work with, and bring in a personal way, almost like a Mark 10:44 attitude, to really show that we are here to be a servant of everyone in the SBC as we go into the public square. I like the King James version. He who seeks to be chiefest shall in fact be a servant of all. And that's really what we want to do. That's our heart. And that's our posture here at the ERLC.
Well, it's the right position. We're the folks who are on the front lines. We're those of us who are in the role that you're in and the kind of role I'm in. We're servants of the bride, washing the feet of the church and caring for its leaders and ministering to them. We want to make their life better, not more difficult, and by representing them, we can do that. So, Brent, as you well know, in the role that you're in, some Southern Baptists have expressed concerns about the direction of the ERLC in the recent past. What are you doing to rebuild those bridges, to reestablish trust where trust has been eroded? How are you approaching that?
Yeah, I think a lot of those, not all of them, but a lot of those have to deal more with maybe personalities. And what I've tried to do is remind our Baptist brothers and sisters that the ERLC, it's actually not about me or any one person. It is an age-old institution. Matter of fact, it's over 100 years old. And so I'm really trying to rebuild us in this new season as we start bringing aboard new team members and really reimagining the ERLC, trying to build it for the next 100 years. But just to give a little bit more detail, last year was actually an important year for the ERLC in terms of anniversaries, because it was the 75th anniversary of this commission being a cooperative program recipient. And so we're so grateful for the faithful and sacrificial giving of Baptists around the convention. And we commissioned this book. It is a look at the last 75 years and top public policy achievements and some of the other ways we have rendered service to our churches. And so we've made this available, would encourage anyone who would like a copy, but it just kind of gives a little bit of that history and the ways that we think we have been a faithful steward of the dollars that have been entrusted to us and how we want to continue leading in the days ahead.
And then Brent, for those who are listening on a podcast, just read the title of the book, if you would, please.
Oh, it's the ERLC and the Cooperative Program.
Okay.
75 years of Southern Baptist advocacy in the public square.
Thank you in particular for leaning in and having those conversations with pastors and church leaders. I think you reached out to me asking for names of folks in Kentucky that maybe you could talk to. Brent, if someone does have a particular question or concern about something the ERLC did or didn't do, what's the best way for them to reach you or to reach the ERLC with that question or concern?
Yeah, generally on social media, you'll find us right at ERLC or ERLC SBC. At the same time, we monitor an inbox, info@erlc.com. That's actually where I would encourage you to direct your questions. And if you do have an issue, look, I was explaining to you earlier, Todd, but I've told others, in many ways, we are the most public of our entities, or at least our work is. It plays out in the public square. And in this time where passions are running high about particular policy issues or whatnot, I get it. People might disagree with various ways that we approach things, or maybe even solutions that we're advancing. I would encourage you, hey, we have Matthew 18 for a reason. Let me know what your issues is personally. Come to me, and let's address them, because oftentimes what I've found, there's a little bit more to the story that maybe folks, as they're just kind of seeing or they're catching a snippet on social media, doesn't really give them a full appreciation of all the variables that our team is thinking through at a given time. So we welcome that feedback. Look, I encourage it because we can best represent the SBC when we know what Baptists are thinking on a daily basis.
Absolutely, man. Just thank you for saying that. So Proverbs says there's two sides to every story. We're not wise if we don't get both of those. We need to make sure we're hearing the other side. Brent, you're going to give people the benefit of the doubt. I think you're asking for that in return, that if folks do have a question, give you the benefit of the doubt and at least reach out. Matthew 18, go to your brother, go directly to him. Don't go all around him. 1 Corinthians 13 tells us to believe the best about each other. So all those things are important when we have any kind of a disagreement. So thank you for leading that way. Well, let's talk about leadership. So you're in a leadership position. Does leadership come naturally for you? And what has helped you grow as a leader?
I have to be honest. I feel like I've been privileged to be in and around a number of very highly visible leaders, whether it's senators, members of Congress, ministry leaders. And I don't know that leadership necessarily comes naturally to me, but what I've really tried to do in all those experiences is listen and watch and take in the way that these various leaders have stewarded the platforms, the organizations, the voices that they have to really make a difference. And I want to continue that, listening and paying attention to what our pastors have to say, what Baptists in the pews have to say, so that I am fully calibrating everything that we do based on where our churches are and what they are dealing with. And at the same time, it goes back to that posture of service, being willing to serve anyone. I can't tell you, in those calls that I've had with pastors around the country, a number of them have just said, I've never had someone who leads an entity call me, and just getting that sense that we are here for them too, whatever the size of the church is. We're here to help you and to assist you. We don't have a qualification in our ministry assignment. It's not just, mega churches or pastors that are in a suburban context or what. No, we're called to serve all pastors, and so we want to do that. And so maybe out of that combination, there's a model of leadership there, but that's kind of what we've put in place.
Well, Brent, you're going to get busier and busier in your role. But boy, if I could give any unsolicited advice, if you could find time every year to make some of those phone calls and keep reaching out and getting those names, that just means the world. When folks who are actually paying the bills, paying the salaries, when they're hearing from the leaders of those organizations, it allows them to go back to their church and commend the work that's being done and strengthen the support. So thank you for doing it. So you mentioned folks that you've been around. Who's been a leadership role model for you, either a historical one or a contemporary leader? And so who's a person and what's something that you learned about their life?
Well, I'll tell you this. I'll start close to home within the church first, and actually I'll start within my own family. My grandfather in Chattanooga was a faithful deacon of his local church for 70 years.
Wow.
And honestly, he could have been a pastor in his own right. He had those skills, but he never sensed that the Lord was calling him to that level of leadership. Instead, he felt, nope, I'm called to serve the body, and I'm called to lead a Sunday school group each and every Sunday. And he did that for the vast majority of those years, except the time that he was called away overseas to serve in the military during World War II. But just that continued faithfulness and service and being willing to be attuned to what the Lord was calling him to, my papaw, Curtis, has just had a tremendous effect on me and the way that I want to go about my work. Historically, honestly, I would point to President Abraham Lincoln. And I say him in particular because obviously he served at a time of great division. That's an understatement. But he set forth particular principles that were ironclad. But instead of, and some people might criticize him for it, but instead of saying we got to have this right now, he surveyed the landscape and said he was able to take the ground where he could to advance those principles where it made sense and when it made sense, because he knew that even though this is where he wanted to head, perhaps the country wasn't quite ready for it. And so he took small incremental steps to eventually get us there, and praise God that he did. So I would say President Lincoln, someone born in Kentucky, is a historical model that I often try and just think through, I wonder how he would have approached this particularly complex or challenging situation.
Brent, I've heard you mention several leadership principles and values just in our conversation so far. You've referenced the importance of humility, the posture of service, to be a servant to other people. I'm hearing you say that you want to lean in when there's a conflict or a conversation that needs to be addressed. Are there other kind of core values or principles that guide you as a leader that you'd be willing to mention?
Well, I would say there's probably one other that I should have mentioned before, and folks won't, it's not abundantly clear right out of the gate for me, but I'm an institutionalist.
Okay.
I believe in the values, or I believe in the value of institutions. I want institutions to work the way that they were designed to. And I think in SBC life, we have a great network of institutions, obviously starting with the family and then the church, moving on to our local associations, state conventions, and then us at the national entity level. And I want all of our institutions, because I think they play such a wonderful role in, honestly, the public square. They serve in a way as an intermediary between the person and maybe some of those political issues that really get us fired up and going. And so I want our institutions to work, and that's what I tried to hint at a little bit with what I want people to see the ERLC. It's not about me, but it's about serving our pastors. And I think when I can remind them that this institution was designed long ago and will be here a long time from now to continually be and render assistance to the local church. So that's probably another value I would add to that.
Brent, I think it's so important what you just said. I've never thought about it, but so I'm thinking about Jim Collins in his book Good to Great, about getting the flywheel moving, and you think about the International Mission Board, and man, God's using Dr. Chitwood in such a wonderful way, and that flywheels turning, and great things are happening over there. The pipeline's getting filled up, more missionaries on the field, funding is coming in. But sometimes there's a kind of a knee jerk to want to get rid of an institution. But can you imagine today trying to build the International Mission Board and the decades it would take to get to where we are right now? And same thing with the ERLC. So I'm thankful that's part of your makeup. Hey, can you tell us about an experience that you had that has shaped your approach to or your understanding of leadership?
Sure. So it's kind of related to what I said before about having that posture of being a servant, and as much as listening is a part of that, also good communication is vitally essential to that. And there was one, as I was kind of maybe thinking through this, there was one experience that jumped to mind about making sure that we are stewarding our advocacy well on behalf of our churches. So early on in the pandemic, which in many ways seems like a lifetime ago, but there were real challenges about the authority of government, the state, and in some cases municipalities. And we were striving to put out a message that, hey, local officials, see your local pastors and local ministry leaders as a resource and actually as a partner for pushing back and combating and keeping against COVID, and then keeping our community safe. There was one municipality in particular that obviously wasn't understanding our message, and they wanted to just close down churches altogether and make sure that even pastors couldn't go in to record their sermons digitally. And we got wind of this. We got a couple of calls about it, and so I actually just took it upon myself. One day I was driving to call the mayor's chief of staff. I was chief of staff here at the time, to call the mayor's office and say, hey, help me understand what you're going through here, because our pastors and our churches have responded to your local community's call. Now they're trying to make sure that their people are served in this time, and you're not allowing them to do just that. And after a couple hours on the phone and some quick action at this local level, pastors were put into kind of the essential categories so they could go in and record their videos and continue to serve their congregations. And it's that story that made me understand, wow, okay, our voice here, it really can make a difference. And this wasn't some big public relations win. We didn't tout it everywhere, but instead we wanted to be faithful to those pastors who called us and said, hey, this isn't quite working out well. And we did that.
So Brent, you've been very judicious on our time, and so now we have time for a couple of bonus questions for you. So what's something at the ERLC in the time that you've been part of it, or even before, that you're most proud of, you're most thankful for how the Lord has used it?
Well, probably for a lot of folks, they'll think through some of our higher profile maybe events, which I think are great. They're in many ways they have a catalog. It's just a convening of folks who agree on an issue. But I'm often trying to think through maybe what are those things that maybe are just a little bit off of the public radar. And there was one thing, I actually asked this question to our team this past December when we got together and said, what are some of the most significant highlights of the time that you all have had here? And went around the room, folks said a bunch of things. And I said for mine, it was actually a Supreme Court opinion. And it was the fact that the ERLC got cited in that opinion. And it was a case a couple of summers ago called Our Lady of Guadalupe. And it dealt with churches and religious organizations being able to hire people that are consistent with those deeply held values. And we submitted a brief to the U.S. Supreme Court saying this part of the law, it's called the ministerial exception, is something that deserves protection, and the government should lose its case here. And thankfully, the court sided with our argument, and as a matter of fact, ended up citing our brief to the court. And that is something that in the years ahead, I actually want to build out that sort of service that we render to our churches, because I think advocating on Capitol Hill is important. Advocating within the wider culture is very important. but I think also advocating before our nation's courts is something that's vitally important to our mission. So I want to grow that and maybe, hopefully, have additional wins just like that, because it's not often you get cited in a majority opinion from the U.S. Supreme Court.
That's exciting. So, Brent, if folks want to know more about you or the ERLC, how can they reach out?
Yeah, I mentioned earlier, email us info@erlc.com or us on media at ERL or at ERLC SBC. We would love to hear from you.
Brent, thank you for your ministry to Southern Baptists through the Ethics and Religious Liberty Commission of the Southern Baptist Convention. Thank you for your partnership in ministry, and thank you for joining Leadership Lessons.
Absolutely. Thank you, Todd.